She called it love. I called it family. But when the bank statements didn't add up, and my name showed up somewhere it shouldn't, I realized who my sister had really been all along. The day I handed my sister the keys to her new car, she cried like I had just saved her life. Maybe in a way, I had. It was a used Honda Civic, nothing fancy, but it was clean, reliable, and hers. I remember how her hands shook when I dropped the keys into her palm. She hugged me so tight that for a second, all those years of bickering and distance between us just disappeared. At that time, it felt like the right thing to do. She had been through a rough breakup, stuck living with our parents again at 30, trying to rebuild her life from scratch. Her old car had died months earlier, and she had been borrowing rides from friends just to get to her part-time job. When she called me one night, crying because her boss threatened to fire her if she missed another shift, I made a choice that came straight from the heart. I had just gotten a promotion, and for the first time in my life, I was doing well enough to help someone else. So, I dipped into my savings and bought her that car the very next morning. No strings attached. I even covered the first few months of insurance because, honestly, seeing her smile again felt better than anything money could buy. For the first few weeks, she was radiant. She texted me daily just to say thank you. She called me her hero. Our parents told everyone how proud they were of me, how family takes care of family. I soaked it all in. It felt good to be needed, to make a difference. But somewhere along the way, that gratitude faded. I cannot pinpoint the exact moment it changed, but little by little, her tone started to shift. The texts became less thankful and more expectant. Instead of "thank you for everything," it turned into "I really need a little more help this month." At first, I brushed it off. I told myself she was still getting back on her feet. But the requests kept coming, small at first, like help with groceries or a little cash to hold her over. I never wanted her to feel abandoned, so I said yes more times than I should have. The turning point came a few months later, when she called me late at night. I could hear the wind in the background, the sound of traffic. She said her rent was past due and she might get evicted if she did not come up with the money by morning. I hesitated, but before I could even think it through, she said the words that hit me right in the gut. "You always said you'd never let me fall." That night, I wired her the money, and as I lay in bed afterward, staring at the ceiling, something inside me whispered that this was not the end of it. It was the beginning of something I would come to regret more than I ever expected. A few weeks after that late-night rent call, my sister showed up at my place with a tray of cupcakes and a new haircut. She said she wanted to thank me properly. I remember thinking she looked happier, lighter, like someone who had finally caught her breath after treading water too long. We sat on the porch, sipping iced tea and listening to the cicadas drone in the distance. She talked about maybe going back to school, about how the car had changed everything, how she felt free for the first time in years. I wanted to believe it. I really did. But near the end of that visit, right when I thought she was about to head out, she dropped it. She said, "There's this job program I want to get into. It starts next month, but I'll need to cut back on hours at the cafe to do the training." I nodded, unsure where she was going. Then she said, real casual like, "I was thinking, if you could spot me for rent next month, just one last time, I could actually focus on this opportunity." That word, last, stuck in my brain like a splinter. Because she had said it before, more than once. Still, I agreed. Not because I believed it was truly the last time, but because I wanted to be the guy who believed in her. And maybe part of me still felt like I owed her something. For what? I could not exactly say. Maybe for all the years we were distant. Maybe just for being the older brother. But from that point on, it was like a switch flipped. The asks came more often. A couple hundred here. A few bills there. One time it was new tires. Another time, it was a weekend retreat for her mental health. Always with the same soft voice and that well-rehearsed phrase, "just this once." At family gatherings, she would brag about how lucky she was to have a brother like me. Everyone would nod and smile like it was some heartwarming story of siblings sticking together. And I played along, smiling through gritted teeth, telling myself I was doing the right thing. Then came the whispers from our parents. "You are doing so well," Mom would say. "It is beautiful how you look after her." Dad added, "You have no idea how much that car meant to her. You changed her life." It all sounded sweet on the surface, but underneath, I started hearing something else, something colder. Obligation. Expectation. Like I had taken on a job I never signed up for, and now there was no quitting without looking like the bad guy. I started having trouble sleeping. Lying awake, running the numbers in my head. My savings had dipped below what I was comfortable with. I began skipping out on small luxuries. No more takeout, no more weekend trips, just to stay ahead. But the worst part? I never told her how much it was costing me. I never pushed back. Not once. Because every time I thought about saying no, I remembered her tears the day I gave her the keys. And I kept asking myself, how do you say no to someone who once looked at you like you saved her life? That question haunted me. Until one day, she asked for something I could not give. And I realized, maybe she never saw it as a gift in the first place. It was around March when she called again. I remember because it was raining so hard that night, the kind of downpour that drums on the roof like it is trying to crawl inside. I had just gotten home from work, soaked from head to toe even with my umbrella, and I was peeling off wet socks when my phone buzzed. Her voice came through chipper, almost too upbeat. She said, "Hey, you remember that business idea I told you about?" I froze. She had mentioned something months earlier, something vague about opening a boutique or maybe an online store. Back then, it sounded like one of those fleeting dreams people throw around after 2 glasses of wine. I had not thought much of it since. "Well," she continued, "I found a space for rent. A friend of a friend is giving me a crazy deal. It is perfect. Seriously, right downtown." I stayed quiet, already bracing for what was coming next. She kept talking. "I just need some help getting started. A small loan. Temporary. Just to cover the deposit and a few basics. Once things get going, I will pay you back." I asked how much. Her tone dipped, just a little. Around 7,000. That number hit me like a slap. Not because I did not have it, but because I realized just how far we had come from that first, desperate phone call about rent. I asked if she had applied for any business grants. If she had talked to the bank. She said no. She did not want to get into debt. She said I was family, not a creditor. I could hear the pout in her voice, even through the static. Then she dropped the line that twisted the knife. "You helped me before when it really mattered. I thought you believed in me." That was the moment I felt it. That awful, slow burn in my chest. Guilt mixed with anger. I did believe in her. At least, I used to. But something about this felt off. Maybe it was how confident she sounded. Like she had already decided I would say yes. Like this was not even a request, it was a formality. So I took a breath and said what I had been afraid to say for months. "I cannot help this time." There was silence. Not the shocked kind. Not even hurt. Just cold. Then she said, real flat, "Wow. Okay." I tried to explain. I told her I had my own expenses. That I had been pulling back to rebuild my savings. That I needed some breathing room. She did not respond. Just ended the call. No goodbye. No thanks anyway. Just a click. For the next 2 days, I did not hear a word. Not even a text. Then, out of nowhere, our mother called. She sounded hesitant, overly cheerful at first. But I could tell she had something to say. "You know," she said slowly, "your sister has been really upset. She said you refused to help with her dream." That was when it hit me. My sister had not just accepted my no. She had gone to the rest of the family. And suddenly, my entire character was on trial. I do not remember the exact words my mother used that night, but the tone stuck with me. That sugary sweet mix of concern and quiet disapproval. The kind where you know she is about to say something sharp, but wrap it in softness so you cannot call it what it really is. "She just feels like you turned your back on her," she said. "After everything she's been through." I asked her if my sister had mentioned the full amount, $7,000. There was a pause. Then, "Well, I'm sure she would have paid you back. You know how passionate she is." That was the thing. Passionate people do not always make responsible ones. And lately, it felt like my sister had started confusing passion with permission. Like her dreams gave her the right to dip into mine. I said I had helped plenty already. I reminded her of the car, the rent, the groceries, the insurance, the quiet transfers that had become routine. My mother sighed. One of those long, theatrical sighs she used to give when I was a kid and forgot to take out the trash. "It's not about money," she said. "It's about family." There it was. That word again. Family. It had become a currency all on its own in our house. You could cash in on it, guilt trip with it, and no one ever questioned the exchange rate. But for some reason, I was the only one expected to keep making deposits. Later that week, I got a group message from my aunt. A simple, cheery invitation to Sunday dinner. She said it had been too long since we all got together. I knew better. I showed up out of curiosity more than anything. My sister was there, sitting pretty between two cousins, laughing like she had not iced me out for days. She did not look mad. She looked smug, like she already knew how the night was going to go. Dinner started fine. Then somewhere between the green beans and dessert, my uncle leaned back in his chair, cleared his throat, and said something like, "You're doing really well these days, huh?" I nodded, cautiously. "That's good," he said, "because family needs to stick together, especially when someone's trying to build a better future." Nobody said her name, but every fork at the table paused at the same time. My sister sat quietly, hands folded in her lap, playing the role of the humble dreamer. Not a word from her, but the stage had already been set. I felt the heat creeping up my neck. My stomach turned. I had walked into a setup. After dinner, as I was grabbing my coat, my cousin Brian pulled me aside. He said something I will never forget. "She told us you promised to always take care of her. That was your thing. The hero brother. Was that not real?" I did not respond. Not because I did not have words, but because suddenly I realized. I had no idea how many promises she had made on my behalf. That was when I decided to check my bank account history, and what I found nearly knocked the wind out of me. That night, after I left my aunt's place, I sat in the driver's seat for a long time, just watching the windshield wipers smear rain across the glass. My mind was running wild, trying to figure out why I felt so off. Why I kept getting this itch in the back of my brain, like something important had slipped right past me. So when I got home, I did something I had not done in months. I opened up my online banking account and started scrolling back. Not just a few weeks. I went all the way. 3 years worth of transactions, just to see how much I had actually helped. Rent payments, insurance, grocery deliveries, utility bills. Each one, small on its own. But together, it was like watching drops fill a bathtub you didn't realize was overflowing. I started doing the math, line by line. Then something stopped me cold. There was a transfer, nearly 3 months back. Not the amount that caught me. It was where it went. The memo field just said, "For Dad." That made no sense. My father and I were not particularly close. We had barely spoken outside of holidays, and I had certainly never sent him money. But the account number matched the ones I had saved under STS checking. I opened my notes, checked it again. Same account. That transfer went from my account to hers. But the label? She had written, "For Dad." My stomach dropped. I started combing through every transfer. And there it was again, another one marked for car repair. But I had already paid for her tires that same month. A different one said, "Emergency vet visit." She did not even have a pet. It hit me all at once. The car I gave her? She had sold it 6 months after I bought it. Bought something newer, flashier. The rent I paid that night, when she said she was being evicted? She was not even living at that apartment anymore. She had moved weeks before that call, into a nicer place. All those just this once favors? I had no clue what they were actually used for. She had not just leaned on me. She had lied. Repeatedly. And worse, she had told the rest of the family I was her personal safety net. A guaranteed yes. A permanent solution. I sat there for a long time, just staring at the screen, heart pounding. I thought about calling her, about demanding answers. But I knew how that conversation would go. She would spin it, say it was complicated, say I misunderstood. So instead, I did something else. I screenshotted everything. Every payment. Every memo. Every little white lie. And I put it all in a folder on my desktop. Because something told me I might need it soon. And I was right. 2 days later, she showed up at my door, crying. It was late afternoon when I heard the knock. Not the polite kind either. It was fast, urgent, like someone trying to beat the door down without making a scene. I opened it to find her standing there. Hair in a messy bun, hoodie sleeves pulled over her hands, makeup smudged just enough to look unplanned. But the thing that caught me most were her eyes, watery, red, and wide like she had been crying for hours, or practicing how to look like she had. She asked if she could come in. I let her. Part of me wanted to slam the door shut. Part of me still remembered the way she hugged me the day I gave her that car. But more than anything, I wanted to hear what she had come to say. She sat on the edge of the couch like she did not belong there. Like this time she actually felt unsure. Then she said it. "I'm sorry." It came out soft, almost whispered, like the words were just barely hanging on. I said nothing. She kept going, faster now. I know I pushed too far. I know I asked for too much. But things have been hard. I didn't know where else to turn. She looked up at me, lip trembling. I panicked. "I should have told you the truth." I waited. She glanced around the room like she was trying to find a safe place for her eyes to land. Then she finally admitted it. The boutique? It was already leased. She had signed the papers. Put down a deposit with a credit card she could not afford. She thought if she just asked me after the fact, I would feel too guilty to say no. That was her plan. Guilt as a strategy. She even smiled a little, like it was something clever. Like desperation justified deception. I figured you'd come through, she said. You always do. That was when it all clicked. This had never been about asking. It was about betting. She was betting on the version of me who always said yes. The brother who always bailed her out. The ATM with a heartbeat. I walked to my desk, pulled up the folder I had saved, turned the screen toward her. Her face dropped. At first, she tried to speak, tried to spin it. That was for Dad. The vet visit was real. I sold the car because it kept breaking down. Lie after lie, stacked like sandbags against a flood. And I stood there, watching her scramble, watching her drown in her own web. Until finally, I said, you were not asking for help. You were cashing in on a role you gave me. Without my permission. Her voice cracked. I just thought, that is what family's supposed to do. I nodded slowly. Yeah, but love is not supposed to feel like obligation. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she said something that changed everything. You owe me. You have no idea what I covered up for you. The words hung in the air like smoke from a match, sharp, lingering, and dangerous. You owe me. You have no idea what I covered up for you. I blinked, caught somewhere between confusion and disbelief. What are you talking about? I asked. She leaned back into the couch, suddenly calmer. Too calm. Like someone who knew they were holding a card I had forgotten existed. Back when you were still with Meredith, she said. That night you called me, slurring your words, saying you couldn't drive. My throat went dry. That was over 2 years ago. I had gone to a bar with a few co-workers after a project wrapped. Had way too much. I remembered calling someone to pick me up, but everything else was blurry. Meredith and I had been rocky around that time. I never told her I went out drinking. I had told her I worked late. I picked you up, my sister said. You were out cold in the passenger seat, phone in your lap with Meredith's texts still coming in. She kept asking where you were. I responded, told her you were stuck in a meeting, that your phone died. I stared at her, stunned. She shrugged. I covered for you. Cleaned up your mess. I opened my mouth, but she kept going. You do not remember what else you said that night, do you? I shook my head. You were ranting about work, about how you hated everyone there. You said you were thinking of quitting, that you felt like a fraud, that you could not keep up. You even said maybe it would be easier to crash the car and be done with it. Her voice was flat. No emotion, like she had told this story to herself a dozen times. I never told anyone, she said. Not Meredith. Not Mom. Not your boss. I could have, but I didn't. Something about the way she said it made my skin crawl. Like it was not protection, it was leverage. Stored and ready. Just in case she ever needed to remind me who really held the power. I felt like the floor shifted under me. She had kept my secret. One I barely remembered, but now knew could have cost me everything. My job, my relationship, my reputation. Maybe even more than that. You're really going to use that against me? I asked. She looked right at me. I'm not using anything. I'm just saying, we've both done things we don't talk about. I never judged you. I helped you. I protected you. She stood up slowly. And I'm asking you to protect me now. There it was. Not a threat. Not a request. A trap, dressed up like a favor. I watched her walk to the door, thinking I would stop her. Thinking maybe I would fold. But I didn't. I stayed quiet. Because just before she left, she turned back and said, you can keep pretending you're better than me. But we both know I could break you. And I finally realized something I had refused to see. This was never about money. It was about control. After she left, I just stood there, staring at the door like it might open again. Like she might come back and say she was bluffing. That it was just heat of the moment talk. That she did not really mean it. But it stayed closed. And the silence in that room was the loudest thing I had heard in years. I went back to my desk and opened that folder again. Every dollar I had given her. Every lie she told. Every manipulation that slipped past me under the disguise of family. And now, this secret. That night, I barely remembered. The one she had stored away like ammo. She did not protect me because she loved me. She protected me because it gave her something to hold over my head. I knew what I had to do, but it was not easy. Because here is the thing they never tell you about walking away. It does not come with applause. There is no cheering crowd, No trophy. No weight off your shoulders the second you decide to stop letting someone use you. There is just guilt. A heavy, aching guilt that asks, what if you're wrong? What if they really needed you? What if that next time was the last one, and you turned your back too soon? I had lived in that question for years. It kept me saying yes long after I wanted to say no. It kept me trapped in the role of the good brother, even when I was drowning. But now I saw the truth. My kindness had never been enough, not because it lacked value, but because it was never meant to be love. To her, it was leverage, a tool, a button she could press every time life did not go her way. So I opened a blank document, titled it What I Owe. I listed out every dollar I had given her, every favor, every cover-up, every sacrifice. Then I added one final line at the bottom, in bold. Debt paid. Then I closed the file, deleted the entire folder. That night, I turned off my phone. The next morning, I changed my number. It was not a loud ending. No fight. No dramatic text. No drawn-out message. Just distance. Clean, quiet distance. But that was not the end. Because 2 weeks later, I got a letter. Not an email. Not a voicemail. An actual letter. Handwritten. No return address. And the first 3 words nearly stopped my heart. You ruined everything. I held the letter in my hands for a long time before opening it. The handwriting was familiar. Slanted. Rushed. Hers. I read the first line 3 times. You ruined everything. She did not waste any time blaming me. Said she lost the boutique lease. That the landlord gave it to someone else when the deposit bounced. She said her credit was wrecked, her car was falling apart, and she was emotionally devastated by how I had abandoned her. She did not mention the lies, or the manipulation, or the trap she tried to spring in my own living room. Instead, she said I had become cold, that I had changed, that I was not the brother she remembered. That part stung a little, because in a way, she was right. I had changed, but not in the way she meant. I was just done being her crutch. At the bottom of the letter, there was one final line. They all know now. And for a second, I did not get it. Until I checked my phone the next day, my old number, which I kept on a backup phone just in case. 23 missed calls. A handful of voicemails. The first one was my mom. You need to fix this. Your sister is heartbroken. What kind of man turns his back on his own blood? The second was from an aunt I had not heard from in months. She said you threatened her. That you blackmailed her with some document. That's not like you. The rest were more of the same. Anger, confusion, disappointment. Everyone believed her side. Because she got there first. I had screenshots, sure. Proof. Records. But by the time you are explaining yourself, you have already lost in their eyes. She had rewritten the story, and I was now the villain. One voicemail hit harder than the rest. It was my dad, a man who rarely spoke unless forced. He said, you always thought you were better than the rest of us. Guess what? You're not. You're just selfish. That word again. Selfish. For drawing a line. For saying no. For refusing to let my sister treat me like a living, breathing bailout plan. I stared at the wall for a long time after that, wondering if it was even worth fighting anymore. If I should just disappear. Cut them all off. Go full ghost. But that is when something unexpected happened. Later that evening, I got a text from an unknown number. It just said, you should talk to Meredith. That name. I had not spoken to her in over a year. My heart skipped. And the next message came seconds later. From her. Your sister told me everything. But I want to hear it from you. I stared at her name on my phone screen for a long time. Meredith. We had not spoken in over a year. After the slow unraveling of our relationship, caused by long hours, emotional distance, and the truth I had never fully faced, it ended with no shouting, just silence. She left one morning while I was at work. Left her key on the counter. No note. Now here she was. Reaching out. Because of my sister. We agreed to meet at a park halfway between our apartments. It was cold that afternoon. Wind biting through the trees. Kids bundled in puffy jackets chasing each other near the playground. Meredith stood near the bench under the big oak tree, hands in her coat pockets. She looked the same, but sharper somehow. Like life had chipped away at the softer edges, but not broken her. She gave me a nod when I approached. No hug. No smile. We sat. The first few minutes were stiff. Small talk that meant nothing. Then she said, your sister sent me a message. A long one. I braced for it. She said you had been manipulating her. That you threatened her with fake bank records. That you used something she covered up for you to control her. I looked away. But then, she continued. She said something weird. I glanced back. She said, he acts like love comes with receipts. That made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was too perfect. Too accurate. Does it? Meredith asked. I shook my head. No. Love does not come with receipts. But it also should not come with invoices. She studied me. I used to think being a good brother meant giving until it hurt, I said. But I was not helping her. I was enabling her. I was letting her treat my love like a subscription service, renewable every month, expected, no gratitude required. Meredith was quiet for a while. Then she said, she told me about that night. When you called her drunk, said you were spiraling. I remember that week. You were so distant. I nodded. I barely remember it myself. She said she saved your life. Maybe she did, I admitted. But it was never about saving. It was about control. She used that night like a bank account. She kept withdrawing from it every time she wanted something. Meredith sighed. Sounds familiar. I looked at her. I am sorry. For everything I put you through. For the walls. The silence. She nodded. I know. And I am not here to fix the past. I just wanted to see if you finally saw it. I do now, I said. We sat a little longer, not saying much. Eventually, we stood up. I am glad you reached out, I said. I did not do it for her, she replied. I did it because I wanted to see if you were still lost. I nodded. Not anymore. She smiled, just a little. Good. She walked one way. I walked the other. Back home, I poured myself a glass of water. No TV. No music. Just the sound of my own breath. Peaceful. My sister never apologized again. I never asked her to. I do not regret helping her. I do not regret the car, or the rent, or the nights I answered the phone when nobody else would. That version of me, he meant well. But I know this now. Real love is not proven by how much you give until you are empty. It is proven by knowing when to stop, and by learning that sometimes, no, is the kindest word you can say.